Julia Beltran wasn't born into power. She was a Texan, raised in a small town in Laredo where a handshake meant something and a person's word was their bond. But after a decade as a federal prosecutor, she had learned the hard way that Washington, D.C. didn't run on integrity, it ran on money, backroom deals, and lies. She had spent years building cases against corrupt politicians, only to watch them walk free because of technicalities, political favors, or hidden forces pulling the strings. The system wasn't broken, it was rigged. The courtroom had been packed that day. Julia remembered the hushed whispers, the scent of stale coffee and nervous sweat, the weight of Fairwater's hopes resting on her shoulders. She'd laid out the evidence, Titan's internal memos detailing their knowledge of the carcinogenic chemicals, the soil and water samples tainted with their residue, the sheer number of people suffering. "May it please the court," she'd begun, her voice ringing with conviction, "this case isn't about regulations. It's about responsibility. Titan Chemical knowingly poisoned a town for profit. They knew the risks, they covered them up, and now, people are dying." Mark Dennison, Titan's slick defense attorney, had countered with his usual charm and misdirection. "Sympathy isn't evidence, Ms. Beltran," he said, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Besides, my client was in compliance with all applicable regulations at the time. Compliance doesn't equal innocence." Julia had retorted, her voice rising. "They manipulated safety reports. They knew what they were doing. But the judges weren't listening. They were more interested in technicalities and legal loopholes than in the human cost. The ruling had been a slap in the face. This court finds that the plaintiffs have not sufficiently proven a direct causal link. Titan Chemical is not liable." The courtroom had erupted. Fairwater residents wept openly, their hopes crushed. Julia had felt a cold fury settle in her gut, a resolve hardening with each passing moment. She knew then that the system was broken, rigged in favor of the powerful. She needed a new weapon, a way to fight back against the corruption that permeated Washington. That night, she'd called Lou Ruiz. Lou, a wiry man with close-cropped gray hair and piercing blue eyes, had a reputation for being a recluse, preferring the company of computers to people. He was a ghost in the digital world, a master of code, capable of bypassing firewalls with a few lines of elegant programming and accessing databases normally restricted to the highest levels of government. He understood the dark underbelly of power, the hidden trails of money and influence. "Lou, I need your help," she'd said, her voice tight with determination. "I need something that can see through the lies, something that can expose the truth, no matter how deeply buried." Lou had understood. He'd seen the same corruption, the same disregard for human life. Together, they'd embarked on a mission to create Sentinel. With the help of Lou Ruiz, a former NSA contractor turned cybersecurity expert, Julia created Sentinel, a software algorithm unlike anything ever built. It could track every financial transaction, political donation, offshore account, and hidden deal of anyone whose name was entered. Politicians, CEOs, lobbyists, judges, power brokers. No one was safe. Sentinel wasn't just an algorithm, it was a digital bloodhound, sniffing out the trails of illicit money. It could penetrate encrypted records, cross-reference global databases, and trace anonymous financial movements. For example, it could identify offshore accounts linked to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, even if those accounts were opened using stolen identities. Offshore accounts, hidden donations, backroom deals, nothing was safe from its gaze. It was designed to expose the network of influence that protected the corrupt, the web of power that had allowed Titan Chemical to walk free. Julia Beltran stared at the swirling lines of code on her monitor, the glow reflecting in her tired eyes. The Titan Chemical case files lay scattered across her desk, a monument to injustice. 500 people in Fairwater, ravaged by cancer, and the corporation walked away scot-free. The memory of Judge McKinney's dismissive smirk, the tightening of his lips and the almost imperceptible upward curl of one corner, still burned in her mind. So did Judge Rodriguez's hurried pronouncements, his eyes darting around the room, his fingers drumming nervously on the bench. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a calculated dismissal of the truth. She clenched her fists. They wouldn't get away with it. But Sentinel wasn't perfect. Julia knew that too well. Its strength lay in revealing financial trails, but linking those trails to key players required more than data. It required proof that could withstand scrutiny in court. Sentinel could expose the smoke, but Julia still had to find the fire. And that meant putting herself at risk. Julia leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes. Sentinel was almost ready. Soon, the truth would come to light. This time, they wouldn't get away with it. This time, she would make them pay. Even if it cost her everything. The hum of the server room was a constant, low thrum, the heartbeat of Sentinel. Julia watched the cascading lines of data, her eyes fixed on the screen. Lou, a silent shadow beside her, adjusted a line of code, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Target locked," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the fans. "Senator Richard Thorne." The name pulsed on the screen, a beacon in the sea of data. Thorne, a man with a reputation for unwavering integrity, was a rising star in Washington. But Sentinel told a different story. A web of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and suspiciously timed campaign contributions, all leading back to Thorne's seemingly impeccable facade. "He's been siphoning funds from defense contracts," Julia said, her voice tight. "Millions. And it looks like he's been using those funds to invest in Titan Chemical." Lou whistled softly. "A neat little circle of corruption. The man who votes on defense spending, lining his pockets and investing in the very company he helped get away with poisoning a town." "We need proof," Julia said, her fingers tracing the lines of financial transactions on the screen. "Something solid, something that can't be spun." Sentinel had revealed the smoke, but finding the fire was the hard part. They spent hours dissecting the data, tracing the flow of money, searching for a connection that couldn't be denied. Finally, they found it. A series of encrypted emails, hidden within a secure server, detailing Thorne's explicit instructions to his financial advisors. "These emails are gold," Lou said, his eyes gleaming. "They prove intent, direct orders, detailing how to hide the funds and where to invest them." Julia felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The first target. The first step in dismantling the system. But she knew that exposing Thorne wouldn't be easy. He was powerful, connected, and ruthless. The next morning, Julia arrived at the U.S. Attorney's office, a USB drive containing the encrypted emails and Sentinel's analysis tucked safely in her pocket. She walked into her boss's office, a man named Henderson, a career bureaucrat who'd always been wary of her methods. "I have evidence of serious corruption involving Senator Thorne," she said, placing the USB drive on his desk. Henderson's eyebrows rose. "Thorne, are you sure, Julia? He's a respected figure." "I'm positive." Sentinel uncovered a network of illicit financial transactions, and these emails prove his direct involvement. Henderson hesitated, his gaze shifting between the USB drive and Julia's determined face. "This is sensitive. We'll need to verify this data. And, Julia, be careful. Thorne has powerful friends." Julia nodded, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. She knew the risks. Exposing Thorne would be like kicking a hornet's nest. But she also knew that she couldn't back down. The people of Fairwater, the countless others wronged by the corrupt, were counting on her. That evening, as Julia left her office, She noticed a black sedan parked across the street, its windows tinted. A chill ran down her spine. They were watching her. The game had begun.